necessarily even learning the hard way, but it's like, if you can reshape the way you even see your failures in life, right? It's like, no, it's a stepping stone. It's not even a failure. It's like, you don't even dwell on it. You just keep going and you just keep grinding. And like, if you can get in that psychological like strut, if you will, almost, where it's like, it's not even a failure. I didn't even see it as a failure. It was just a stepping stone towards the next like positive outcome, right? I mean, enough failures and you get a positive outcome. So that question was really interesting to me. But I mean, that's what I would say as far as like doing it the hard way. I would say just continue to fail and keep failing and realizing that failure isn't a bad thing. It's the next stepping stone.
Welcome to Keeping Tabs. I'm Tabitha Crock, and every Monday, I talk to someone here in North Idaho. The goal to connect more people in the Coeur d'Alene area. And then every Friday, I talk to someone outside the community to bring in a new perspective and to learn a little bit about yourself. Okay, I have Ben with me today. I am very excited to talk to him. Funny thing is, last week I got to jump on his podcast. He's a podcaster, right? And financial wealth guy. I think you put, what was it, financial nerd, or what did you say on your profile?
Oh, geez, on my like Instagram or something like that? Yeah, financial nerd, I think is what it says.
Spokane.
We all have things we're nerdy at, okay? Like, I just happens to be finance.
I know. So he's a little bit of everything. I'm so excited to chat with you. Could you do a little intro and kind of who you are, what you're up to, where you're located?
I know.
A little bit about Ben.
Okay. I think I am on your like not native side. Like, you do a podcast one, right? That's like local to Coeur d'Alene and non-local. Even though I'm like not local, I feel like I am local.
Right.
So, because native Spokane. So Ben Clune, born and raised in Spokane, grew up in Green Bluff, up on the north side, raised by my parents own a marketing company here in town. So I was raised in a family business in the marketing world. At 15 years old, I started investing in the stock market just kind of for fun, saw what money could do for people and thought, I'd like to have some of that. I should probably get into this, investing thing. When I went to GU for accounting, so I'm kind of the black sheep of the family, if you haven't figured out yet. Like, my family's in marketing, my brother's a designer. I went to GU for accounting and work in finance, so they think I'm really weird. So they're all art nerds, I'm all finance nerd. And then when I was graduating, I had no idea what the heck I wanted to do with my life. I thought I was going to go work in accounting and I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I was married and graduating college and was really uncertain what the direction of my life looked like. And then about a month prior, I decided I wasn't going to go into accounting. And I started kind of just broadening my scope and looking as to what I wanted to do. And I had narrowed it down to a position at an advertising firm here in town locally. And then also saw a job description on Indeed for a financial advisor. I was like, well, geez, that kind of sounds interesting. Like, what the heck does this financial advisor thing mean? And it was never something I thought I would do as a job. But I read the description and I was kind of tell people, it's like, I wanted a job where I could help people, right, and get paid to do it. And I joke, and some people are like, Ben, you can't say that. I was like, I joked, it's like, okay, well, then you're a pastor or a financial advisor, right? If you're sitting in a coffee shop and helping people, one of them, you get paid a lot more and there's a lot less emotion and stress. So I think I know which one I'm going with. And you had to do a year in it, and you had to bring $1 million in your first year. If you didn't, you got cut. And so it was one of those things. I was like, well, we're right out of school, like no time like the present to give it a go and see if it works. And if it doesn't, I can't say I didn't try. But then that brings me to today, still married to the same girl, 10 years as of this past July, coming up on 11. Yeah, she works as a dental hygienist locally. Her dad was the dentist, so grew up in a local family business as well. And we have 2 boys, just over 3 years old and 9-month-old. So I'm living up on 5 now. So there's the whole life story.
Wow, you're busy, especially with little boys.
Yeah, they keep you busy. There's something. Especially the 3-year-old. I'll have to show you a video off air, but he was counting the other day. This is a funny story. It's semi-inappropriate, but
Good, I love it.
That's life. And so he's counting. He's telling me about how he's going to school today. And then tomorrow we're going to go to his school for conferences. So 1, 2. And I'm like, buddy, you got to go 1 and 2. Like both fingers have to stay up. And he's like, no, this day I go to school. Tomorrow you come to school. And he's just sitting here going like this at me. So I have a picture. I took a video of it and did the screenshot. And he's sitting there like this, just his finger up in front of his face. And I'm like, mornings with a 3-year-old. Like, well, yep, that's about right.
When I upload this on YouTube and when I upload this on like Instagram, that is the screenshot.
That's the thumbnail. It's just hello.
They're gonna be like clicking on that one.
Yeah, number 1, huh?
So, and then how did you start a podcast in the midst of being a dad, husband, financial advisor?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think of how the podcast format came about. I can't tell you exactly how the podcast format came about, but I can tell you why it came about, at least, and it was for accountability. So at the beginning of 2019, my podcast mate, Stephen Brown, who I think he referred to me as a podcast husband on your podcast.
Yes, he did. He did.
A month ago when he recorded or something like that. That shook me a little bit. Wasn't sure how to feel. We were talking about like, hey, we had a really good year. 2018 was a good year for us, both from a business standpoint, right? And we want to keep that momentum going. We got a lot of positive momentum going. We both like to be less fat. So I'm still working on that whole less fat thing as referenced earlier in the podcast, or it's like a full circle. You come full cycle, right? It's like you lose it, you get fat again, and then you got to lose it again. It sucks. But so 2019 was, hey, we're going to kick butt in business, and we're going to kick butt in our health, and we're going to get in the best shape that we've ever been in. And we did that actually. I mean, I dropped 20 plus pounds in 2019 and was at the lowest I've been in a very long time, and was working out 4 or 5 days a week. Stephen loves going to the gym, but his was eating healthier, really. And then wanted to, like I said, continue the momentum of business and learn from a lot of the people that we have as mentors, and share those mentors with each other, right? And we're like, man, what a great format to do that in the podcast platform, where it's like we have a lot of good connections locally. If we can bring those people in, one of them, you had our first interview ever, Tyler Lafferty, was on your podcast as well. Let's bring those people in. Let's hear from them. Let's learn about their successes and failures, and glean what we can. And then why not share it with others if we can, and blast it out there as a podcast for those that actually want to listen. So it's kind of how it started.
Yeah, and now you're interviewing all kinds of crazy people like myself, and learning all kinds of great things. And your questions are great, and your format's fantastic. You guys do it in person, which is really fun because there's a lot more like interaction, especially when there's 2 of you talking. It is a blast.
Well, and I think to some degree it just helps break down the barriers, and we always say, just think of it as like we're having coffee or we're having beer together, right? It's like it's meant to be conversational in nature. It's not meant to be a structured interview. Like I think people identify with that more, right? Like it's just natural. It just flow.
I know. I was kind of upset I didn't get offered a beer or a glass of wine while I was in there.
Well, you came too early. You should have stuck around.
That's when happy
stuck around for another hour or 2, huh? Yeah. Plenty of that in here.
I noticed when I was over there, they have a great setup over in Spokane.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to come on back then for a happy hour.
Deal. I'll take you up on that. So if someone what kind of piece of advice would you give someone that is wanting to start a career in finance?
Ooh. I always tell young people that come in their chat, like, hey, hello, hi. Okay, freeze that. We'll edit that out later.
We're good.
Maybe.
We're good.
I'm glad it was you and not me. But as far as anybody thinking about getting into finance, it's a hard profession, especially the first 5 years. So if you're talking about getting into it and trying to build a book specifically in the advisory role, right? Because there's the side of finance where you can be salaried and you can be an employee, or you can be a producer, right? And in most cases, you're commissioned. And so I've only ever been commissioned. I've never had a salary. So I had to build a book. Like, you have to build a business to get paid anything. You got to manage your relationships and your clients, and keep up on an annual or semi-annual basis, and manage their portfolios, right? So it's not as much about the analytics, right? If you're on the financial advisor side, it's a little less about the analytics and more about the relationships. But for young folks getting into it, I always say, it's going to take 5 years of psychological trauma, essentially, where you are the person that's just trying to get by and to build a book and make some money, and you're taking the millionaires out to lunch, and you're picking up the bill, and you're just hoping your card doesn't bounce, right? For a lot of people, and you're just trying to grind. It's just a grind. So psychologically, it's very tiring the first 5 years. I always say it's like, you got to have a nest egg already built up. You got to have almost no expenses, or you got to have someone who can support you those first couple of years. In most scenarios, some firms will give you a salary, and they will salary you at a small amount. But it's like anything in life. I always say it's like, if you believe in your abilities, then not taking the salary and going the commission route or starting your own thing, I think is going to be the best bet, because you're going to get to a place quicker of making more money, right? If you can go out there and you have a really good network already built in, that's going to be signing on with you. But it's hard. I mean, one of the things I underestimated the most about finance is the psychological and emotional toll that it is, because I mean, there's so much emotion in money, right? And a lot of the decisions people make, most of the decisions people make are not based on math. They're based on emotion, right? And what I'm doing and what you think that you'd be doing in finance is all just math, right? And I tell people, it's like, I can tell you what the math is. I can tell you how the math works out. I can tell you why you shouldn't pay off your house, and you should probably put it into the market if you have extra cash. But debt, innately, from an emotional standpoint, we don't like. So we want to pay it down first before we do that, right? But so a lot of wealth creation is sometimes going against the emotions and going against what feels right to do what actually is right mathematically.
Yeah, no. Well, a lot of the newer financial people love the LinkedIn. I don't know how many messages I get on LinkedIn daily about financial advisors wanting to connect.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I guess like, if you can't meet with people, if you're living in a city where there isn't like, you can't meet face to face, there's no coffee shops open, there's no like lunch.
Yeah.
I guess it's a creative way of reaching out to business professionals.
Well, I think it's like anything, right? You're kind of just cold calling. It's just a form of cold calling. Like, they're just connecting, hoping to God that somebody messages me and say, oh my gosh, I've been looking for a financial advisor. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But
right. Exactly.
We've all been there.
So obviously you've gone through a lot of different, like you said, you're the black sheep of the family. You went into finance, and you got married probably, I mean, it sounds like 10 years ago. So, I mean, and you're super young. So,
yeah, I was 21.
Yeah. So super young. Is there a life lesson that you have learned kind of the hard way as you've gone through everything?
A life lesson I've learned the hard way. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I was thinking about this, there's always that job interview question of like, what are your failures? Like, show me a time that you failed, right? And I was like trying to think of times that I failed. And this sounds funny because it's like, of course I failed. Like, everybody fails, like, at some point. But I think it's all about how you see your failures. And I've never seen my failures. Like, I couldn't even answer the question because I didn't see them as failures. That sounds really dumb, this answer does. I realize that. But it's like, it was an interesting, like, introspective thing for me to stop and be like, what are my failures? Like, no, I failed. Like, for my definition of the word failure, it's like, I totally failed, but I just never saw them as failures. So I think, like, not necessarily even learning the hard way, but it's like, if you can reshape the way you even see your failures in life, right? It's like, no, it's a stepping stone. It's not even a failure. It's like, you don't even dwell on it. You just keep going and you just keep grinding. And like, if you can get in that psychological, like, strut, if you will, almost, where it's like, it's not even a failure. I didn't even see it as a failure. It was just a stepping stone towards the next, like, positive outcome, right? I mean, enough failures and you get a positive outcome. So that question was really interesting to me. But I mean, that's what I would say as far as like doing it the hard way. I would say just continue to fail and keep failing, and realizing that failure isn't a bad thing. It's the next stepping stone towards something positive coming about. And you don't know what that positive thing is going to be.
Right. And I think that's like such a great point. It really is that you're like, people hear failure and they think something super negative. But if you are in a business profession, you actually see those failures. When I raise money for nonprofits, I use a failure as like, this fundraiser did not work. It flopped. We'll never do that again. Or I'm just going to switch it a little bit and hopefully works if I just tweak it. And so the failure is just learning.
Yeah. And that's all it is, right? I mean, failure is just an opportunity to learn. And if you can learn from it and tweak it in the future, awesome. It's get it out of the way. Fail. What do they say? Fail fast, fail quickly.
Yep.
Get it over. Get that failure. Yeah. Keep going.
So a couple of fun questions for you. If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, geez. Dead or alive?
Yeah.
I mean, you'd like to say it's somebody. I mean, Walt Disney would be an interesting one, I think, to have, just because like you've shaped a lot the way that a lot of the kids live and a lot of the adults how they even live at this point too. I mean, he'd be interesting, but also, I mean, I just think like your great grandparents for most people. I think it'd be interesting to have lunch or drinks or something with my great grandparents. And if you could bring it back, like what was the history really like? Like tell me what it was like for our family 100 years ago, right? Like my family had a farm on the Snake River. It's like, what was that like living on a farm on the Snake River? Like I see pictures, right? And I see the artifacts or whatever that came from the farm, but now it's underwater, because of a dam. So it's like, tell me about the history of living on the farm that I don't know about. I think would kind of be an interesting.
Well, and it's so true. Like we were just talking about your son, and you're able to video him telling you a story, and that we can capture things now in like just videoing, like our family doing something together, or you do stuff like at work. I video people doing stuff, and we have this history, but we didn't have that. We don't have that to look back on.
No, I mean, if you could see a video of like where your grandparents lived, right? I mean, we don't have that type of stuff to your point. We got a black and white old Polaroid photo type thing that we're trying to do. It was interesting the other day, my brother or father or somebody found an app that would take a still picture and animate the face, right? You seen that?
Like it gives me chill bumps even talking about it because they look so realistic.
It's crazy. So it's like our great grandpa, like looking around from the still, like and moving, like so you can see what their face anatomically might have been, how it would have been built, and how they're looking around and moving. You're like, that's weird.
And I've seen some of those videos of people videoing like their parents seeing that, and then they're all just crying and emotional. I was like, oh my gosh.
Well, and I wonder, like, if those people knew the folks that they're seeing moving, like if they're crying or not, right? Like what the connection would be interesting too.
Exactly. All right, Spokane guy, what is the best go-to restaurant there? We talked about this on my podcast or on when I went to you guys. Go-to restaurant in Spokane for you?
Ooh, in Spokane specifically.
Well, I mean, in the Spokane area. I mean, if you've got a hidden gem, please tell me.
I'll break it up. We'll start north, and then we'll start working our way to the South Hill. Okay. So again, I live up on 5 Mile. Okay. And so north side didn't have a whole lot of great restaurants, I would say. And when I say north, I don't mean like north of the river. Okay, people. Again, I grew up in Green Bluff. I mean the actual north side of Spokane. So 1898, up by the old Kalispell, in the old Kalispell, well, it's the new Kalispell, the old Spokane Country Club, Kalispell Country Club, up north of town. They have great setting, probably one of the nicer views in town from a restaurant, overlooking the golf course and the rock mountains in the background and everything. Really a great spot, like 1898. As far as downtown, I mean, I'm a big fan of Durkin's because I love a good craft cocktail and a good cheeseburger. So Durkin's is one of my favorites. Also going to GU and just like the camaraderie of a bar. I'm a big fan of Jack and Dan's.
Jack and Dan's. Oh, yes.
For the win. Spokane staple. I mean, you can't not have Jack and Dan's on the list. And then what else downtown? Like we have our go-to places. I'll give you just those are kind of the go-to places. If we were going up the South Hill, I do enjoy the happy hour at Luna on the backside of the South Hill. So happy hour at Luna is also pretty good.
See, you didn't say Churchill's.
I did not say Churchill's, like Steven. What a cop-out answer. Somebody from out of town would say Churchill's.
Oh, it still cracks me up.
I think I said this on. I know he was like, like a taken aback and offended. Though Churchill's,
He was like staring at you the whole time. He was like, "What? I didn't have a good answer."
Dude, whenever I say something opposing Steven, he's always like, "No, you're going to be wrong. You're going to be wrong. You've got to be wrong because I'm right. Because I'm always right. I'm Steven." But Churchill's cheesecake, some of the best cheesecake.
Fantastic. Those are perfect.
Started north, went south, ended with dessert.
Yeah, that's perfect because I do ask that question. So when I'm in Spokane, I know where to go.
Yeah, Durkin's is, I mean, for downtown, pretty good one.
I mean,
here's a good one though.
Which one?
So here's how we do downriver area, the downriver area, Audubon area, right? So we got Downriver Grill on one side of the street, Flying Goat on the other. Okay.
I love Flying Goat.
Flying Goat's legit. So here's how you play the Flying Goat game because you got a 45-minute wait every time you go. So you put your name on the list at Flying Goat, right? And then they tell you it's going to be 45 minutes. You're like, awesome. You walk across the street to Downriver Grill. You get yourself a cocktail. Then you order the waffle fries with the gorgonzola cheese sauce on the side so the fries don't get soggy. Okay. And then they bring that out and you make sure you have a friend who gets bored and has to get up every 15 minutes and they go and check on where your status is at Flying Goat. But then you can dip your fries in the cheese sauce and have your cocktail while you wait for the Flying Goat.
Wow, you do it right.
You got to have a good time. Especially when you got young kids, man. It's a very small window that you get to get out. So you're like, we're doing this up.
You guys have it timed perfectly. I love it. Like when I grew up in Harrison. So anytime we would go to Spokane, it was to go to like a Chiefs game or a concert or something cool like that. So we would just go to Dick's and then go to whatever event we were going to. So.
And that's a hamburger place for those that are wondering. Well,
yeah. Yes, it's the hamburger place. If you're listening, and have an idea, that's what we did.
Hey, another Spokane staple though.
It is, and it's perfect. It's just, if you just need that quick burger.
You just need a greasy gut bomb.
Gut bomb and some great entertainment from the transients.
Yeah, maybe a disease or two. Yeah, it just depends.
Oh, I love it. So if you could have a billboard in downtown Spokane and it could have anything you wanted on it, could say anything, what would your billboard have?
Oh, geez. It depends on how feisty I am that day.
I love
it. I mean, some days it would say, be nice. Some days it would say, you've seen the movie Liar, Liar?
Yes.
Okay. So there's the scene in there. And I say this to people sometimes when it's like, and it's just mostly with regard to politicians when they do something stupid that goes against what is actually the law, right? It's like you guys create the law, yet you don't even pay attention to the law, and then you end up breaking it because you're that dumb. But it's usually the quote. It's like, "Quit breaking the law, asshole." It's like I'd love that up on a billboard in town.
Perfect.
Or probably the other one would just be like, "Don't fear failure" or something like that, right? Like go out. Fail big, fail hard, something cliche.
Yeah, and I think failure's like the theme today.
Yeah, I like failing. It's good.
Mm-hmm. So, are you reading any? Is there a go-to book you're reading to right now that's kind of been a motivation, or are you not a reader? Are you a podcaster?
No, I read books. One of the best ones that I just read was one that was given to me by a colleague. They actually gave to the staff, whole team for Christmas, called The Psychology of Money. And it was a really good book because it reshaped kind of the way you think about money and like what is money. And working in finance, your perception and ideas of money can become very distorted, right? Because I mean, for the most part, we only work with people that have money. I mean, I don't work with people that don't have money. I manage people's money. So the people we work with are usually pretty affluent. So your idea of like, well, $1 million isn't that much anymore, right? Is like a funny thing to even say. You're like, most people never have $1 million. So it kind of like reset and just brought you back to like a human level to some degree, which was really cool for working in. And I've shared it and bought it for a lot of my closest friends at this point. Like, hey, you need to read this book because it talks about wealth and it talks about time. and just, how important time is, and what wealth can do for you to give you time, to buy your way out of cleaning your house and different things like that. Right. And so just kind of some of that. And then the one I'm in the middle of reading now is called The Cold Millions, which is, I don't read novels, it's like an actual storybook. Usually it's like a self-help book. That I'm reading. So my mom gave me this one to read, The Cold Millions. So it's based on unions in the Spokane area during the mining days. And so it talks a lot about the different areas of Spokane and Coeur d'Alene, and it talks about a lot of the mines that we had and some of the union riots and living through the union riots back in probably the 20s, 30s. Is kind of when it's set. So interesting book. I'm only about halfway through it at this point, but
that's really cool.
The Cold Millions.
That's really cool. So do you have any like upcoming goals or projects or anything that you're really like kind of excites you outside of your work?
I'm a car guy. So I don't know if we talked about this before. I like cars. So I always collected Hot Wheel cars. So it was Hot Wheel cars and model cars. So I still have all of those. But now they've gotten a little bigger. And so I'm running out of space for cars. So I can't work on them is the funny thing. But so we have my father and I mostly have a few older cars that we kind of they're always continual projects. I'm a toy guy too. So I like cars. I'm not the guy who thinks a car is A to B. So, I mean, you might see me driving a goofy 1985 Chrysler LeBaron, or you might see me in a 1969 Oldsmobile Delta 88 convertible, or in a 1952 Chevy pickup, right? So, I mean, I think the experience of driving is just really cool. And it's one of the ways that I can turn off and relax, because it can be hard to shut off sometimes, just constantly going. And so driving does that for me. So just some little projects on the cars, and like putting a little Bluetooth stereo in the Oldsmobile that looks like it's original to the car, right? So, and big deck project. We got a big deck that we got to work on at our house. So that's going to be a demo starts this weekend. So that's pretty exciting stuff. But mostly travel. I'm just excited to start traveling again.
Right. I know we were just talking about the vaccine the other day because you might have snuck over somewhere to get one, and I'm just not going to say anything else there. But but yeah, that's like another thing is like I think everyone is just ready. It's so fun to see people on their spring break trips this year. Like during break, I'm just seeing like all my friends from like that have kids that are all on the Oregon coast this year. They're all out doing stuff, and it makes me so happy to see people starting to like travel and do things with their families.
Totally. It's hard to be home and in that 1 year just doing the same thing over and over, right? I mean, we talk about the grind, like can't even go to dinner, not even supposed to have friends over to have a drink and just relax a little bit and live life. That's tough.
It's really tough. And I think everybody should be required to have vacations and should be required to do those things.
Totally.
Mental health is everything when it comes to a year like we had last year.
Well, and sometimes it's hard to take vacations in the kind of like looking into craziness, right? You're like, I'm just so busy. How could I take a vacation? It's like, but you don't really realize that whole running on empty. Like, yeah, I'm running on empty, but I'm still productive. It's like, no, you're really not as productive as you'd like to pretend you are.
Exactly.
It's like, it'd probably better if you just took a few days off and came back and hit this again.
Yeah, and that stress and anxiety and all the stuff that you're dealing with, it's wearing on your body. People don't even know it.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things I've had to learn is like, like stopping and like resetting actually is a beneficial thing. It's hard here, but it's really good for the rest of the body just to stop. And even if it's just the walk, like I don't have time to go outside and walk in the building or anything right now. I was like, I need to focus. I need to get this stupid email out.
Yep.
But I mean, just taking the time, and sometimes it means letting the ball drop on a couple things. To get the other stuff done, right? It's just kind of life figuring out.
Exactly. Well, that's what I tell my fiance. It's fun to say, see, is that when he's like grinding and working, I'm like, let's go for a walk. Like, it's just, you've been like in one space for too long. I'm like, I'm going to go crazy. And I know he needs it. And it's like your mental health.
Yeah.
So great for it.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You get a little cuckoo.
A little cuckoo. So So if someone wants to connect with you, whether it's, financial, that kind of stuff, the podcast, or just, get to know you, is there a way that someone can reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, they can email me if they have an interest in chatting about finance. Ben at 10capital, TENCAPITAL.com. Our podcast, Ordinator Extraordinary, they can connect through me through that. O2E Journey, I think, O2E on Instagram. Steven does all of most of the social media stuff. Just don't tell anybody. I literally show up and he does all the editing and stuff. He does all the work. Let's be honest. I'm just the pretty face. Not sure what that's saying if I'm the pretty face, but whatever. We'll go with it. Just go with it.
I love it. I love it. And like we brought up a couple times, it's been kind of, a rough year, whether it's financially, emotionally, physically. I mean, people are struggling in one way or another. Can leave us with one piece of positive advice as people go into their day.
Well, I can say something I've tried to start implementing just to create that positivity is stopping and just saying gratitudes. We've talked about this on the podcast before. I was like, you don't really realize what gratitudes do for you as a person too, psychologically, and for your overall attitude, right? It's I think sometimes there might be a lot of shit going wrong in your life, and sometimes looking and saying yeah, that's bad, that's going wrong, but what's going right? Because it's easy to dwell on the failures and the things that are wrong. I mean, the news does plenty of that for us with just pointing to everything that's wrong instead of some of the positive things. And you get on Facebook and you see everybody else's life is so great.
Right.
I'd say disconnect from social media, go for a walk, and on your walk, just say what's going right. It's oh my gosh, today, it's go outside and be oh my gosh, it's beautiful out today. It's sunshine, the sun is shining, and I get to be out for a walk. That's a positive. It's I'm healthy. That's a positive. I'm married to a beautiful woman who works hard. Positive. I've got healthy kids. Positive. Beautiful house. Good job. I get to take a vacation when I want to. A lot of things that are positive, right? Which I think sometimes people get stuck in just, I'd be saying grind a lot, but just the idea of just it's the same thing all the time. But sometimes the same thing all the time is what a lot of people envy. I know a lot of people envy my life and how I live. I know there was a quote, and I should have found it, kept it, but it was essentially that wife that you don't want to go home to, someone else lusts for, that home that you think is too small, someone else desires, right? That junker car is what the homeless sleep in, essentially, type thing. And you're just oof. Yeah, a lot of the things that you're sitting there oh God, I got a Toyota Camry. They got this old car instead of the S-Class Mercedes, right? It's yeah, but you have a car that gets you from A to B to a job that pays the bills, that puts food on your table, right? It's yeah, you might not be where you want to, be in life, but that doesn't mean you're not on your way there, right? And so sometimes stopping, and I'm guilty of this all the time, stopping and looking back to say hey, how far have I come? I think is really important too. And because it's easy to just keep looking forward. God, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. It's yeah, but look where you've come from,
That's such a great point. And that's because lately I'm living in a studio apartment, there's two people, a lot of things, and it's overwhelming. Yeah. But I do have a home, and we're saving money, and we're doing all this stuff so that we can be more successful. So it is a good point. It's you kind of get that in your head that, so stop and be grateful.
Yeah. Well, we talk about goals, right? And I always say it's goals are a really good thing to have, but a lot of the time, if you're so focused on the goal, you can lose the appreciation for the now too. And I mean, we were talking about this in the office, you get a big client on board and you don't even celebrate that anymore. It's so stopping and celebrating your small wins every once in a while and be no, we kicked some ass, man. We've got this client, we competed, we won. You got to stop and acknowledge that and celebrate that to refill your bucket a little bit, I think too.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, Ben, thank you so much for giving me some time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. It was fun. Sorry, I got a little preachy. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Keeping Tabs. I'm Tabitha Crock, and every Monday I release a podcast about different community members here in North Idaho. And then we end the weeks on Fridays with a podcast about the things I'm passionate about. outdoors, adventures, sports, the van life, and even current events. So if you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube, Spotify, or iTunes. Thank you again. Now go be kind and do something great.